Our Violent Ends, Chapter 2. Roma felt the prodding sensation in his shoulders first, then the stiffness in his bones, then the terrible, terrible pain shooting through his head. Christ, he hissed, jerking awake. As soon as his vision cleared, he sighted the black boot responsible for the prodding, attached to the last person he wanted to encounter while slumped on the floor. "What the hell happened?" Dmitri Voronin demanded, his arms crossed over his chest. Behind him stood 3 other white flowers. They were inspecting the storage unit with particular attention, eyeing the bullet holes studded into the walls. "Juliet Kai happened," Roma muttered, hobbling to his feet. "She knocked me out." "It looks like you're lucky she didn't kill you," Dmitri said. He smacked his hand on the wall, rubbing charred grit and dust into his palm. Roma didn't bother saying that all those bullets were his. It was not as if Dmitri were actually here to help. He had probably gathered his reinforcements as soon as he heard about the Grand Theater rocking with gunshots, frantic to be where the chaos was. Dmitri Voronin had been everywhere these past few months, ever since he missed the showdown at the hospital and had to piece together afterward what had gone on between the White Flowers and the Scarlet Gang, like everyone else. Dmitri Voronin would not be left out of the next big showdown, as the sound of any disturbance in the city, no matter how slight, so long as it involved the blood feud, he was now the first on the scene. "What are you doing here?" Roma asked. He touched his cheek, wincing at the bruising that had spread. "My father sent me." "Yes, well, that was not a great decision, was it? We saw the merchant outside having a nice chat with Kathleen Lang." Roma bit back his curse. He wanted to spit it to the ground. But Dmitri was watching, so he only turned away, picking up his fallen pistol. "No matter. Tomorrow is a new day. It's time to go." "You will give up like that?" "This is Scarlet—" A whistle blew outside, echoing up and down the maintenance stairs. This time Roma did curse aloud, tucking his pistol away before the guard Muncible barged into the storage unit, their batons out. For whatever reason, the enforcement saw the White Flowers and decided to direct their attention to Dmitri, eyes pinned on his weapons. "Lâchez la pistolet," the man at the front demanded. His belt glinted metal, handcuffs catching the low light. "Lâchez-moi, c'est vous laver la main." Dmitri did not do as he was told, did not drop the gun dangling casually on his grip, nor his hands up. His refusal seemed to be so insolent, but Roma knew better. Dmitri did not speak French. "You don't control us," Dmitri snapped in Russian. "So why don't you go on and—" "Cala maintenant," Roma interrupted. "J'ai un tout en desporte d'air de théâtre. Allez investiguer." The guard Muncible officers narrowed their eyes, unsure if they should follow Roma's instruction, if there was truly an incident outside to tend to, or if Roma was only making up lies. It was indeed a lie, but Roma only had to snap, "Go," again, and the guard Muncible scattered. That was who he had worked so hard to turn into. That was who he was doing everything in his power to stay as. Someone who was listened to even when the officers were Scarlets. "Impressive," Dmitri said when it was just the White Flowers again. "Really, Roma, it is most—" "Shut up," Roma snapped. The effect was immediate. He wished he could feel the same satisfaction at the red that rose up Dmitri's neck, at the amused smirking from the men that Dmitri had brought along, but all he felt was empty. "Next time, don't come prancing into foreign-controlled territory if you don't know how to deal with the foreigners." Roma marched out, overly aggressive in his stride as he took the maintenance stairs back down to the ground floor. It was hard to say what exactly had him this worked up. There was so much boiling beneath his skin. The merchant slipping away, the strange assassin in the stalls, Juliet being here. Juliet. He stomped extra hard coming out of the theater, squinting up at the gray clouds. A jolt of pain came from his arm then, and his hand flew to the cut that Juliet had made, thinking he would find a clump of blood as rancid and dead as the feelings of her. Instead, as he rolled his sleeve up gingerly, his fingers came upon only smooth fabric. With a start, Roma stopped at the side of the pavement. He peered at his arms. It had been finely wrapped, secured with a bow. "Is this silk?" he muttered, frowning. It looked like silk. It looked like the silk of Juliet's dress, torn from the hem. But why would she do that? A horn blew from the road, drawing his attention. The car idling there flashed its headlights. Before the chauffeur at the driver's seat stuck his arm out and waved at Roma. Roma remained unmoving, his brow furrowed. "Mr. Montagov," the White Flower finally hollered after a long minute. "Can we go yet?" Roma sighed, hurrying to the car. There were 22 vases scattered around the Kai mansion, all of them filled with red roses. Juliet reached one to cup one bud in her palm, her finger sliding along the delicate petal's edge. Nightfall had long passed outside. The hour was late enough that most of the servants had gone to sleep, shuffling to their rooms in their nightgowns, bidding Juliet a good rest when they passed her in the hallway. She figured they had spoken only because it would have been strange not to acknowledge the scarlet heir lying on the floor, arms splayed and legs propped upright on the walls as she waited outside her father's office. The last servant had bidded her well more than half an hour ago. Since then, she had stood up and started pacing, much to Kathleen's annoyance. Her cousin had remained seated primly on an actual chair the whole time, a folder waiting on her lap. "What could they possibly be talking about?" Juliet grumbled, releasing the rose in her hand. "It's been hours. Move it to another day." Lord Kai's office door finally opened, revealing a nationalist taking his leave. Months ago, Juliet would have been curious about the meeting, would have asked for a briefing. Now the sight of nationalists coming and going in this house was so common that she hardly cared. It was always the same. Squash the communists, whatever the cost. Riddle them with bullets, break up their labor unions. The nationalists didn't mind how the Scarlets did it, so long as they achieved their objectives. The nationalist hovered at the doorway, then turned back as if he had one more thing he forgot to say. Juliet narrowed her eyes. The sight of the nationalist had grown familiar to her, true, but this one... There were stars and badges galore decorating his uniform. A general, perhaps. Testing her limits, Juliet held out her hand for Kathleen to take. Kathleen, albeit confused, accepted and picked up her folder, both of them walking toward the nationalist. "No more warlords." The nationalist flicked an imaginary piece of lint off his military uniform. "And no more foreigners. We enter a new world, and whether the Scarlet Gang enters with us is a matter of loyalty." Yes, Juliet interrupted, squeezing past him and pulling Kathleen along. "Blessed be the Kumantong. Wan Su, Wan Su, Wan Su." She started to push at the door. "Juliet!" Lord Kai snapped. Juliet stopped. A glint had entered her eye. The same sort that came upon when the cooks brought out her favorite meal. The same sort when she spotted a diamond necklace she wanted in the window of a department store. "Present and reporting," she said. Lord Kai leaned back in his large chair, folding his hands over his stomach. "Apologize, please." Juliet bobbed an unbothered curtsy. Then she looked at the nationalist. He was observing her carefully, but it was not the leer of the men on the streets. It was something far more strategic. "Please accept my apologies. I trust you can find your way to the door?" The nationalist tipped his hat. Though he offered her a smile, as was polite, the expression stopped entirely before reaching his eyes, merely crinkling his crow's feet without any sign of warmth. "Of course. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Kai." He had not been introduced to her, so they had not made an acquaintance at all. Juliet did not say this. She merely closed the door, then rolled her eyes in Kathleen's direction. "So tiresome. When you're on your way out, then leave." "Juliet," Lord Kai said again, with less bite now that the nationalist was no longer present for Juliet to be a pest in front of. "That was Shu Yang. General Shu. Do you know who he is? Have you been following the papers in the advancement of the Northern Expedition at all?" Juliet winced. "Baba," she started. She dropped into a seat opposite her father's desk. Kathleen silently followed suit. "The Northern Expedition is so terribly boring. It will determine the fate of our country." "Okay, fine. The reports are so boring. General so-and-so took the segment of land. Army Division so-and-so moved this far up. I practically cry in excitement when you send me to strangle someone instead." Juliet clasped her hands together. "Please, just let me do the strangling." Her father shook his head, not bothering to entertain her theatrics. His eyes only swiveled toward the door thoughtfully. "Pay attention to this," Lord Kai said slowly. "The Kumantong is changing shape. Heaven knows why they are no longer pretending to cooperate with the communists. We can afford carelessness no longer." Juliet thinned her lips, but did not get smart with her response. Revolution was coming. She couldn't deny that. The Northern Expedition, that was what they called it. Nationalist troops marching north through the country, fighting the warlords that ruled regions in fragments, seizing territories in an attempt to piece China back together. Shanghai would be the stronghold, the last piece before the current poor excuse of a national government was utterly ousted. And when the armies came, there were no warlords here to defeat. There were only gangs and foreigners. So the Scarlet Gang needed to get on the right side before they arrived. Of course, Juliet said. Now. She gestured for Kathleen to go on. Almost hesitantly, her cousin leaned toward Lord Kai's desk, gingerly passing the folder in her hands. You were successful? Lord Kai asked, still speaking to Juliet, even as he took the folder from Kathleen. You better frame that contract, Juliet replied. Kathleen almost got in a fistfight for it. Kathleen nudged a subtle elbow into Juliet's side, a warning in her expression. By normal circumstances, Kathleen couldn't look stern even if she tried, but the room's low light helped. The miniature chandelier dangling from the ceiling was dialed to the dimmest setting, casting long shadows up against the walls. The curtains behind Lord Kai's desk were undrawn, blowing faintly because the window was open the smallest crack. Juliet knew her father's old tricks. In the dead of winter, as it was now, the open window kept the office chilly, kept every visitor on their toes when they took off their coat to be polite and ended up shivering. Juliet and Kathleen kept their coats on. A fistfight, Lord Kai echoed. Lang Ceylan, that is not like you. There was no fistfight, Gufu, Kathleen said quickly, shooting another sharp glance at Juliet, who only grinned in response. Merely a scuffle between some people outside the Grand Theater. I managed to extradite the merchant, and he was thankful enough that he was willing to sit down at the hotel next door for a cup of tea. Lord Kai nodded. While he scanned the handwritten terms, he made a few noises of approval here and there, which, from a man of silence, meant the business deal had lifted his mood. I don't know the specifics on what we wanted him for, Kathleen hurried to supply when Lord Kai closed the folder. So the language is rather vague. Oh, no bother, Lord Kai replied. The Kuomintang are here after his weaponry. I do not know the specifics either. Juliet blinked. We're entering a business partnership where we don't know what we're dealing? By all means, this was not any big matter. The Scarlet Gang was used to trading in human labors and drugs. One more illicit item only added an inch to what was already an infinitely long scroll, but to trust the Nationalists so wholeheartedly... And on that matter, Juliet said suddenly, before her father could answer her question. Baba, there was an assassin after the merchant. Lord Kai did not react for a long moment, which meant he had already heard. Of course he had. Juliet may have had to wait hours before she could see her own father, slotted at the bottom of a wait list filled with nationalists and foreigners and businessmen, but messengers could come and go at a whim, slinking into the office and whispering a quick report into Lord Kai's ear. Yes, he finally said. It was likely a white flower. No. Lord Kai frowned, his gaze darting up. Juliet had jumped in with her disagreement rather quickly and emphatically. There was a white flower present who was also trying to make an acquaintance with the merchant, Juliet explained. Her eyes darted to the window, unwittingly, eyeing the golden lamp humming in the gardens below. Their light made the rose bushes glow with warmth, a far cry from the real biting temperature at this time of night. Roma Monzagov. Her eyes flicked back, swallowing hard. If her father had been paying attention, the speech at which she sought his reaction would have given away her guilt immediately, but her father was gazing off into space. Juliet let her exhale slowly. A curious matter on why the white flower heir was after the merchant, too, Lord Kai muttered, half to himself. He waved his hand then. Nevertheless, we need not worry about an amateur assassin, likely a communist or any faction opposing the Nationalist Army. We'll have a Scarlet Men protect the merchant from here on out. No one would dare another attempt. He sounded certain. Still, Juliet chewed her lip, not so convinced. A few months ago, perhaps, no one would dare upset the Scarlets. But today... Has there been another letter? Lord Kai sighed, lacing his fingers together. He said, Ceylin, you must be tired. It is my bedtime, yes, Kathleen replied easily, taking the cue to leave. She was out in seconds, the office door closing behind her before Juliet could say goodnight. Her father must know that she would merely fill Kathleen in afterward about what was going on. She supposed it made him feel better to think the rest of the family wasn't getting involved in this, that the fewer the people knew, the less likely it was to explode into a troublesome matter. "The blackmailer strikes again," Lord Kai said, finally retrieving an envelope from his desk drawer and passing it to Juliet. "The largest sum yet." Juliet reached forward, first examining not the letter inside, but the envelope itself. It was the same each time, utterly plain and remarkable, save for one detail. They were all postmarked from the French concession. "Tiana," she breathed, pulling out the letter and reading its contents. A truly outrageous amount, but they had to send it. They had to. She tossed the letter back into her father's desk, letting out a tight breath. Back in October, she thought she had killed the monster of Shanghai. She had shot Qi Ren, watched as the bullet studded into his heart, and the old man seemed to crumple in relief, freed from the curse that Paul Dexter had sent on him. His throat had split open, and the mother insect had flown out, landing on the wharf of the Bund with finality. Then Kathleen found Paul Dexter's letter. "In the event of my death, release them all." And the screaming followed immediately. Juliet had never run faster. All the worst-case scenarios flashed through her mind. 5, 10, 50 monsters ravaging the streets of Shanghai. Each and every one of them a starting point of infection. Their insects flying from civilian to civilian until the whole city was dead in the gutters, throats torn to shreds, and hands bloody to the wrist. Instead, Juliet found only one dead man, a beggar, by the looks of him, slumped up against the exterior of a police bureau. The screaming had been the shopper who spotted him, and by the time Juliet arrived, the small, panicked crowd had already dispersed, wanting to avoid interrogation if the Scarlet Gang became involved. Dead men on the streets of Shanghai were as common as starving men, desperate men, violent men, but this one had been murdered. His throat slit down the middle, and next to him, pinned to the wall with the bloody knife that did it, was the insect that had flown out of Qi Ren. To any other observer, or to the police detective who would later examine the scene, it was nonsensical. To Juliet, the message was clear. Someone was out there, holding on to the other insects that Paul Dexter created. They knew what the insects did and the damage they could wreak if released. The first blackmail letter demanding a sum of money in exchange for the city's safety came a week later. They had been coming ever since. "Your thoughts, daughter?" Lord Kai said now, his arms relaxed on either side of his chair. He was watching Juliet carefully, cataloging her reaction to the demand. He asked for her thoughts, but it was plain that her father had already made up his mind. This was merely a test to ensure that Juliet's judgment aligned with the correct course of action, to ensure that she was a good heir, fit for leading the Scarlet Gang. "Send it," Juliet replied, swallowing the tremor in her voice before it could escape. "Until our spies figure out where the hell these letters are coming from and I can put the blackmailer 6 feet underground, we keep them happy." Lord Kai remained quiet for a second, then another. He reached for the letter, let it dangle between his fingers. "Very well," her father said. "Send it." Elisa had fallen back into her old habits, eavesdropping in the rafters. She was crammed inside that ceiling space above her father's office again, having crawled down from a broken crevice between the drywall and the sitting room of the 3rd floor. "Ouch," she muttered, moving the weight of her body off her knee. Either she had grown taller in these last few months, or she still wasn't fully recovered from laying in a coma for weeks. She used to be able to squeeze herself small enough so that she could squirm along these rafters, then drop into the hallway outside her father's office, when she wanted to leave. Now her limbs felt awkward, too stiff. She tried to lean down, but her balance tilted immediately. "Shit," Elisa whispered, gripping the rafter hard. She was 13 now. She was allowed to curse. Below, her father was deep in discussion with Dmitri, him behind his desk, Dmitri seated with his feet up. Their voices, unfortunately, were soft, but Elisa had sharp hearing. "Curious, is it not?" Lord Montagov asked. He had something in his hands, perhaps a note card, perhaps an invitation. "No threat, nor violent action, merely a demand for a sum of money." "My lord," Dmitri said evenly, "if I may, I would argue that the message is rather threatening." Lord Montagov scoffed. "What, this old line?" He flipped the paper over, and Elisa confirmed that it was indeed a note card. Thick and cream-colored. Expensive. Pay up, or the monster of Shanghai resurrects. It is tomfoolery. Roma destroyed that wretched monster. Elisa swore she saw Dimitri's jaw twitch. I fear that the Scarlets have already received multiple threats, starting from months prior, Dimitri insisted. They have paid the amount demanded each time. Ha! Lord Montagov turned toward the window, opting to observe the street below. How are we to know it is not the Scarlets pulling this, a scheme to loosen the gold in our pockets? It is not, Dimitri replied surely. A beat passed. Then he added, My sources report that Lord Kai believes the threat is to be real. Interesting, Lord Montagov said. Interesting, Elisa echoed up in the rafters, so quietly that she was audible only to the dust motes. How would Dimitri know that Lord Kai believed? Then the Scarlet Gang are merely made of fools, which we have known all along. Lord Montagov threw the card on the floor. Forget it. We are not paying an anonymous blackmailer. Let them do their worst. It is marked from the French concession, Lord Montagov interrupted before Dimitri could get another word in edgewise. What are the French to do? Will they walk themselves here and intimidate us in their iron suits? Dimitri had no further leeway to argue. He merely leaned back into his seat, lips pursed, thinking for a long moment. Indeed, he said eventually. Whatever you believe to be correct, then. The conversation turned to the white flower clientele list, and Elisa frowned, wriggling along the rafter. Once she was far enough from her father's office not to be overheard, she slowly eased herself down a thin gap in the wall to emerge in the hallway. This house was a Frankenstein-esque experiment in architecture. Multiple apartment blocks mashed together with barely finishing stitching. There were so many nooks and crannies above and below various rooms that Elisa was surprised only she alone used them to go from place to place. At the very least, she was surprised no white flower had accidentally pressed up too close to a wall and fallen through the floorboards when they trod upon a loose tiling. Elisa started up the main stairs, taking them two at a time in her hurry. The plain necklace dangling in her clavicle jumped up and down with each of her hard steps, cool against her flushed skin. Benedict! Elisa exclaimed, coming to a stop on the fourth floor. Her cousin hardly paused. He pretended not to see her, which was ridiculous because he was walking right for the staircase, and Elisa was still standing at the head of it. Benedict Montagov was a wholly different person these days, all gloom and dark frowns. He may not have been the happiest person a few months ago either, but he lacked a certain light in his eyes now that what made him seem like a complete marionette, moving through the world at command. Mourning periods in this city were often short affairs. They came in rapid succession, like cinema showings ushered in and out of the theater to make room for the new. Benedict was not only mourning, he was half dead himself. Benedict, Elisa tried again. She stepped in his path so he couldn't wind past her. There are honey cakes downstairs. You like honey cakes, right? Let me through, Elisa, he said. Elisa stood firm. It is only that I haven't really seen you eat, and I know you no longer live here, so maybe it occurs outside of my sight that the human body needs nourishment or else— Elisa, Benedict snapped. Get out of my way. But now! A door flew open. Don't yell at my sister! Roma was calm when he stepped into the hallway, hands behind his back like he had been patiently waiting at his door. Benedict made a deep noise in his throat. He spun to face Roma with such menace that Elisa would have thought the two to be enemies, not cousins of the same blood. Don't tell me what to do, Benedict said. But wait. You seem to only have something to say when it doesn't matter, don't you? Roma's hand jerked up in his hair in instinct, before his fingers halted an inch away from his newfound style, unwilling to mess up the gel in the effort. Roma had not broken as Benedict had not shattered into 1,000 sharp pieces to cut anybody who got too close, only because Roma Montagov had swallowed it all inward instead. Now Elisa looked at her older brother, her only brother, and it was like he was being corrupted from the inside out, turning into this boy who wore his hair like a foreigner, who acted like Dmitri Voronin. Each time their father lavished praise on him, clapping his shoulder solidly, Elisa flinched, knowing it was because another dead Scarlet had been discovered on the streets, with scrawls of vengeance beside the body. That's unfair, Roma said plainly. He had little to counter. Whatever, Benedict muttered, pushing past Elisa. She stumbled ever so slightly, and Roma rushed forward, calling after their cousin, refusing to let him have the last word. But Benedict did not so much as glance back while he took the stairs down. His footsteps were already thudding along the second floor by the time Roma neared Elisa and took her elbow. "Benedict Ivanovich Montagov!" Roma yelled down. "You—" His frustrated insult was drowned out by the slam of the front door. Silence. "I just wanted to cheer him up," Elisa said quietly. Roma sighed. "I know, it's not your fault. He's having some difficulties. Because Marshall is dead." Elisa's words were heavy, thick, a terrible weight sliding across her tongue. Hard truths tended to be that way, she supposed. "Yes," Roma managed, "because Marshall is—" Her brother could not finish his sentence. He merely looked away and cleared his throat, blinking rapidly. "I must go, Elisa. Papa is expecting me." "Wait," Elisa said, her hand sneaking out and snatching the back of Roma's suit jacket before he could start down the stairs. "I heard Papa's meeting with Dmitri. He—" Elisa looked around, making sure no one else was nearby. She lowered her voice further. "Dmitri has a mole in the Scarlet Gang, maybe even the Inner Circle. He's been siphoning information from a source direct to Lord Kai." Roma was shaking his head. He had started shaking his head before Elisa had even finished speaking. "Little good that'll do us now," he said. "Be careful, Elisa. Stop eavesdropping on Dmitri." Elisa's jaw slackened. As soon as Roma tried to ease his jacket out of her grip, she only tightened her hold, not letting him leave. "You're not curious?" she asked. "How did Dmitri put a spy into the inner circle of the Scarlet Gang? Maybe he is simply more intelligent than I am." Roma interrupted dryly. "He knows how to cite when someone is a liar and can establish his lie first." Elisa stomped her feet. "Don't mope," she said. "I'm not moping." "You mope," Elisa insisted. She looked over her shoulder again, hearing a rustling on the third floor and waiting for whoever it was to retreat to their room before speaking again. "Another thing I thought you would want to know. Papa received a threat. Someone claims to have the ability to resurrect the monster." Roma lifted a single dark brow. This time, when he eased his jacket out of Elisa's grip, she let go, seeing no point in accosting her brother any longer. "The monster is dead, Elisa," he said. "I'll see you later, yes?" Roma walked away, his saunter casual. He could have fooled anyone in that tailored suit and cold stare. But Elisa saw his fingers tremble, saw the muscle in his jaw twitch when he bit down too hard to keep his expression steady. He was still her brother. He wasn't gone entirely.